So we spend all this time making a list for how to get the boat back in the water. Isn't that the same thing as getting her seaworthy? Not exactly. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm talking about the 4 different areas that you want to think about when you're thinking about getting your boat ready to actually take her away from the dock. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Teak Guard from allguardproducts.com. Looking to refinish your boat's teak with a minimum of mess and fuss? Look no further. Their non-toxic, water-based formulas for cleaning and finish will turn your teak from dingy to sparkling in no time. Use coupon code BG20 for 15% off of your order of $50 or more. allguardproducts.com. Admire your teak, not maintain it. Once we put our boat in the water, people were thinking that we would just immediately be ready to just go off and go sailing. Well, the list of things we needed to do to get her splashed was one thing. The list of things that we needed to do to get her seaworthy was a totally different level of detail. Mostly, we're talking about 4 different categories of things. You need to be sure that your safety items are all taken care of. You need to make sure that all the stuff is going to stay in one place. You need to be sure, or do the best job that you can, that you're keeping water out, because getting water in isn't a whole lot of fun. Then there's the quality of life. And that's on the list. It's at the last, but it's also very important. I thought I'd share some of the things that we went through in each one of these categories before we'd left to take Calypso on this shakedown cruise. First of all, the safety category. Going offshore entails a few additional safety and communications items. And one of those things for us is that we figure family and friends might like to know what we're up to. And there also were some Coast Guard things that we needed to take care of. We needed to register the AIS with the proper MMSI number. We needed to get new documentation paperwork that showed the proper hailing port. That's not really a safety, that's more of a paperwork, but it still was important. We needed to activate our InReach subscription. And with this cute little device, we access weather information, we can do fast seas weather routing, and it's also kind of fun because we can share our progress with friends and family. We needed to buy and register our ePerb. Actually, it wasn't that we needed to buy it. We needed to change it out from being attached to Mischief to being attached to Calypso. Then there was a list of things that we needed to do for the Coast Guard. These included things like making sure we have flares that are accurate and up to date. We needed to hang up the required plaques for waste management and oil. We needed to check that our PFDs were actually Coast Guard certified because we've had them for a while and didn't know if actually they were so old that they were before the Coast Guard was certifying our inflatables. And we needed to take our fire extinguishers out of the boxes and make sure that they were in accessible places on the boat. We needed to run a jack line, which is a line that we fix our tethers to when we're going out of the cockpit when we're underway. And what that means is that we are never separated from the boat. We needed to install our GPS and chart plotter in the cockpit. And for us, that means just running a cable from down below. And we've got a handheld. We actually do most of our chart plotting and GPS stuff on an iPad. It was a matter of finding the right mounting hardware to put it onto our Bimini frame. We wanted to install the remote microphone for our VHF in the cockpit. And actually where it is in the companionway. At one point we used to have it in the cockpit, but it's just too vulnerable to being wet. And we didn't want to do that this time. And of course, because we needed to know where we were going, we needed to download charts for the East Coast of the United States. So those were the big things that we needed to do safety-wise. And that's one category. The second category was keeping things in place. And when you go sailing, the boat moves. It moves unpredictably at times, including even if you're at anchor and other boats speed past and throw a wake that's just sends you flying and you weren't expecting it. Sometimes boats speed past and throw a wake that is in opposition to the already existing wave patterns. So since we're taking our home and everything that we have with us, all the essentials with us on this trip, making sure that they stay where we want them to stay is a pretty important step. Things that this category required that we do included things like putting non-skid mat between all the dishes and under the pots and pans. This works actually marvelously well. We are of the opinion that good plates are important for our quality of life, and so we don't have plastic plates or paper plates. We have real kind of ceramic plates on board, and I found that if you put a non-skid mat between each one of them, they don't slide around on top of each other, and they actually stay put in the galley where I want them. We needed to install cabinet doors and latches for those cabinet doors. We needed to make sure that the engine cover, which is a really heavy piece of corian counter with teak fiddles, that there was a way for that to positively be held in place. We needed to run the propane hose, regulator, and solenoid. And I guess that's a little bit of a safety thing, but it also is a keeping things in one place. Going along with the propane was permanently installing one of the propane tanks with a box that went over it. We needed to build a bulkhead for the final support of the fuel tank because the fuel tank is a very large, heavy, awkward thing, and having it just sitting on one, you need to have two supports according to the manufacturer, and we needed to build a bulkhead that went at the aft side of it. We needed to put a latch on the slider for our bed so that when we want to close it and leave it in its kind of closed position, that it would stay closed. It's not that big of a deal when we have it open, because when we have it open, it's because we're sleeping in it and we tend not to go anywhere, so we don't need to latch it open. But when we're offshore, it's closed so that we have a sea berth, and it needs to be able to latch closed. We needed to install hinge hardware on the center hatch and the forward hatch so that they can be dogged down closed so that water doesn't go underneath them and pick them up and take them all the way off. And we needed to do the final installation of the stove with gimbals and pot holders and all of that stuff. So that's the keeping things in place list. Then there's the keeping water out list. And I have to say, one of the things to know is that you can do the best job that you can keeping water out before you leave to go sailing. You will find leaks when it rains and when you sail hard. So just know that that's the keeping water out is a constant project list. But before we left, we had a few heavy rains and found some pretty big leaks. So we addressed those. A lot of the process to keep water out involved removing the piece of hardware entirely, cleaning it out, and rebedding the handrail with either 4200 or butyl tape. So we had to do that with a port side handrail, with a starboard side dorade box, with the old deck fill for the water, and with the port side winch base. We also installed the Dodger, which we borrowed from Mischief. And the Dodger, we feel, is an important water keeper outer thing. What it does is it allows us to keep the companionway open much of the time, and it does help keep us dry on watch. We have blessed the fact that we have a Dodger a million times already during this trip, and we've had great sailing, in part because we've got this Dodger, and if there's spray coming over, it doesn't keep us wet. So that's helpful. We also needed to make sure that the center hatch was dogged down and screwed down. When Jeremy rebuilt the new center hatch, he put Lexan, and it needed to be countersunk for screws and then O-rings that went on it to keep the water out. Even though I said that keeping water out was its own category, it certainly is part of quality of life. As you can see, there's some of these that just morph into the others, and they're not quite so cut and dry. So if you have an object on your list or an item on your list that fits into one category or maybe more than one, just know that that's normal. But quality of life is something very important when we're living on board. I could cook using a headlamp, but having lights in the galley are kind of nice, and I just hit a switch and there I can see everything I want to. Being able to use a toilet and not a bucket goes a very long way towards making the boat feel like home. Those are some of the things that we had on our quality of life list. Those quality of life projects included things like running the starboard lighting circuit and installing salon lighting and galley lighting. They included things like installing the head, buying a sheet for the Code Zero sail, buy a fitting to be able to use the grill on the boat, because I like to grill and it's been awfully hot. It's really nice to have that grill to be able to pull out and keep some of the heat out of the boat. We needed to make sure that the dinghy was going to work, both from a fitting on the foredeck standpoint to running the outboard. And I probably was supposed to unearth more warmer clothes from storage and onboard deep storage, because it's cold in Maine, but we haven't really gotten to Maine. But that's okay. We also managed to get a new anchor roller built, and we installed it, which means that we've been using our new Mantis anchor, which we love. We call it our portable mooring. It's a 45-pound Mantis. The other really important thing that we needed to do before we could take the boat and go sailing was to get all the stuff off the boat that we didn't think we were going to need, and get all the things out of storage to put on the boat that we think we were going to need. It's very interesting, a month into this shakedown cruise, the things that maybe we wish we had brought, and the things that we really didn't need to bring. So that's life, though. And when we share an anchorage, and it's been really cool that I've heard from, at least we've waved at one boat. There is a listener who heard me and actually left me a little note on Instagram and said, "Hi, I'm right next to you." And so that was really cool, because yes, I love sharing an anchorage with people. And when we share an anchorage, I can't wait to hear about the list of things that you needed to do before you left to go cruising, because when we're out there, that means that we did get the boat seaworthy. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love it when you share us with your friends. We love it when you come up and say hello to us. And by the way, both Carolyn and I are going to be at the Annapolis Boat Show. So if you're there, come by the booth and say hi. Carolyn will be there most of the time. I'll be there from 4 to 6 every day. We would love it if you came up and said hello. Have the most spectacular week.
Slow